Hello, I am Mage Skeleton. I really wanted to talk about these counterspells. In Magic the Gathering, and it's mostly the Commander format where I am most acquainted with these various different cards. And for the purposes of going through each of these cards, we're going to assume we have a fairly expected hand of cards. So we'll start off here, Mindbreak Trap. Mindbreak Trap, its casting cost: if an opponent casts 3 or more spells this turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay Mindbreak Trap's mana cost. Exile any number of target spells. Example of board state. Now, I want to make it perfectly clear. I wanted to make sure this was the first card so I could better contextualize this. Basically, not all of these cards where you can cast like this are going to be on my bad list. Mindbreak Trap, for example, it's actually a really fair card. If somehow your opponent goes to cast 3 or more spells in that single turn, they're either playing stuff to win on that turn, even if it's turn 1. Now you have a way to actually stop them from winning the game. Or maybe they cast 2 spells. There's nothing you can do about it because you don't have 4 mana to cast a spell, and it's only going to have the alternate casting cost if they cast 3 or more. This is a balanced Magic the Gathering card. Now we're going to go into quite the list of cards. Tidal Bore. I don't think anyone's ever going to play this thing. Maybe I should have not even included this. You may return an island you control to its owner's hand instead of paying its mana cost. It's just tap or untap target creature. It's an instant. Maybe, it's a combo piece. It's actually a really neat card, but your board state, you have to have an island on the field. This is the required board state you have to have to play this card for its alternative casting cost. So, I hope that sets expectations for this video. Let's move on. Here's Thwart. 2 generic and 2 blue. We have an instant. You may return 3 islands you control to their owner's hand instead of paying Thwart's mana cost, and then counter target spell. No one's ever going to play this card. First of all, your board state has to, at minimum, look like this, and that's all going back to your hand. That's 3 turns effectively, unless you're doing something to put the lands on the battlefield. This, countering whatever that spell is you're countering with this better be worth it. Snapback. Everyone knows Snapback. Everyone loves Snapback. So this is one of the cards that, while it feels unfair, it's balanced. I'm definitely sure it's fine. It's balanced. You're just returning a target creature to its owner's hand. You don't need a board state. This can stop someone from comboing off if their combo requires a permanent or, well, a creature on the battlefield. It's like almost too powerful in my opinion. Then we got Snap. This is one of those handful of cards where it's effectively a free cast, but it's not. You have to have 2 mana sources to cast it, and hopefully those mana sources are lands, because the thing why I wanted to just include it in my list, you're untapping up to 2 lands when you cast this. I do find it really interesting that it doesn't say target lands, so I guess if somehow you wanted to group hug, untap an opponent's Lotus Field, this is a way you could do it, I suppose. You're not targeting it, but I digress. Then we have Days, a fairly popular card. You may return an island you control to its owner's hand rather than paying Days' mana cost. So, at minimum, your board state has to have 1 island on it. Let's move on. Complete the circuit. I felt I wanted to make sure to have this as an example of like what I'm trying to talk about. It's 6 mana, 1 blue, 5 generic. Instant has Convoke. So to cast a spell with Convoke, you can tap creatures instead of actually paying the mana. I really like Convoke. It's actually pretty cool. It's really interesting that this also gives you the ability to cast sorcery spells as if they have flash. And then it does the whole copy thing. That's cool and all. But your board state, if you wanted to cast this spell without actually using any mana sources, you need 6 creatures, and only one of them needs to be blue. I was very tempted to just have this be the other blue creature I decided to have as an example, and I don't know, 5 ornithopters. But then I was like, you know what? I'm doing Commander mostly. I know Commander. You can have more than one persistent petitioner. It'd be fun to just do this with them. So now you get to see that as the example. Mental Misstep. The thing about Mental Misstep is that Phyrexian mana cost. Your board state could be literally nothing on board. This is one of the ones I actually have a problem with. I hope more people can see what I'm seeing with these, because like we'll get into some of the spicier ones, and there are definitely expected ones that we're going to be covering that I'm sure you'll be pleasantly expecting. Um, yeah, counter target spells converted mana cost 1. I'm sure when this card was designed, this is back when Standard was the only format. There are a lot of really powerful spells that are just 1 mana, and being able to just pay 2 life to counter. Life is a resource, and when you can use it, when you have 40 life, it doesn't feel like you're actually using any resources. And that's why I have a issue with Mental Misstep. Or I should say, this is one of those cards that grinds my gears. Now we're on to the other 2 cards. Here's Force of Will. Has 5 CMC. You may pay 1 life and exile a blue card from your hand. And again, your opponent will have no idea that you could possibly have this as a possibility. You could have 2 cards in your hand, and your opponent might assume you are literally holding on to Force of Will, or Force of Negation for that matter, and you have a blue card as your other card. And these are, in my opinion, very unfair cards. These cards should be banned. And I know, you've probably heard the arguments. You're probably screaming at me. These cards are fine. You can only have 1 of per deck. Force of Negation, for example, can only actually do non-creature spell. But hey, that non-creature spell gets countered this way. You have to exile it. Now we're on to foil. So, this is a really good example of where the line can be drawn. You may discard an island card and another card rather than pay this spell's mana cost. So you have to have an island in your hand and then also have to discard another card. So you're losing 2 cards to cast this without paying that 4 mana. But like with what blue does, I am continually surprised no one plays foil. But this card is balanced versus what Force of Negation, Force of Will, and Mental Misstep. Because you're losing 2 cards, and one of those cards is potentially a mana source you could have played on your next turn. But no one plays this card, even though blue is the color of I draw a card. I really hope Heuristic Study is banned by the time I have uploaded this, but probably not. Flare of Denial. This is a fair and balanced Magic the Gathering card. This is what I feel should be the standard for counterspells. If they're going to be a free cast, you have to have some kind of board state. Now, I know I'm showing off Lady Octopus here, but assume this is your board state. On your entire playmat, on your entire play area, this is your board state. You have this creature on board. Guess what? You can cast Flare of Denial without paying its mana cost. That's fine. It's fine. Because maybe someone threatens your Lady Octopus, and if you lose Lady Octopus, you can't cast this for free. We'll get more into that for a different card too. Speaking of Fierce Guardianship, we have the same situation going on. Can only counter a non-creature spell, but guess what? If you don't have a creature, namely being your commander this time, you're not casting Fierce Guardianship without having to pay its mana cost. Fair and balanced Magic the Gathering card. So you're at least sitting with some kind of board state. You're in the game. And then we have Unwind. Similar situation to, I believe it was Snap. It's non-creature spell only, untap up to 3 lands. Again, if you really wanted to, you could untap an opponent's Lotus Field. I don't know why you would, but I suppose you could. I'm not a judge, though. But theoretically, as a board state, you have 3 mana sources, and hopefully those mana sources are lands, because it will untap up to 3 lands. And then we have Misdirection, another fair and balanced Magic the Gathering card. But what's this? You may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay Misdirection's mana cost. Change the target of target spell with a single target. So, because it's not full-on countering, and it's actually doing a fairly unique effect, and this is a color break in my opinion. This should be something that should have been a red card, but I digress. This is good. This is a balanced card. Too bad not many people play it. And then we have Disrupting Shoal. You may exile a blue card with converted mana cost X from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Counter target spell if its converted mana cost is X. No one plays this because if the opponent casts a 4 CMC spell and you don't have a 4 CMC blue card in your hand, you're not countering with this. It's just not going to work. No one plays this. It's like a balanced card. Now we're on to the elephant in the room. Pact of Negation. This is a fair and balanced Magic the Gathering card. You can cast it for no mana. So what's the deal? Well, at the beginning of your next upkeep, pay 3 generic and 2 blue. If you don't, you lose the game. The only problem with this card, and we have two examples here. Your board state could look like this, or your board state could look like this. The only problem with this card is if somehow everyone forgets this effect when it comes to that player's upkeep. I can't tell you how many games I was able to pull off getting a win just because I caught the player going through their turn, and then they go to interact with my board. They were real concerned about my board, and then I would tell them in response, you pay 3 and 2 blue at your upkeep or lose the game. And then the effect enters the stack. It's a weird rules thing, but this is a fair and balanced Magic the Gathering card. And don't ask me about subtlety. I read subtlety. Subtlety is an insult to counterspells. I would not consider subtlety a counterspell.